It starts like every palace bombshell does, quietly, officially, and far too late at night. In this fictional reconstruction, William joins Princess Anne in a move so severe it feels unthinkable, stripping the Queen Consort of every operational privilege the role implies. No ceremony, no warning. Just a cold procedural shift that turns Camilla's title into a shell. Phones light up. Courtiers freeze, and the public hears the same question in every whispered sentence. What did Camilla do that forced the heirs to act? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. This is the opening strike of our docudrama, premise an emergency decision with institutional consequences, delivered not like a family disagreement, but like a system correcting a malfunction. Because the palace doesn't argue when it's frightened. It reorganizes. And the shock here isn't only the severity of the decision. It's the alliance behind it. William, the future king, stepping into the role of cold architect. Princess Anne, the Iron Duty enforcer, stepping into the role of executor. Together, they don't just signal disagreement with Camilla, they signal that the institution has decided Camilla's access is a liability. That's why the phrase Queen Consort powers matters in this fictional telling, even though the monarchy pretends power is mostly ceremonial. These powers aren't a list on paper. They're informal influence, access to briefings, proximity to private conversations, patronage networks that build loyalty, the ability to shape schedules, the ability to appear in the right places at the right times, the ability to quietly decide which door opens first and which never opens at all. Stripping those privileges doesn't remove a title. It removes oxygen. It turns presence into performance without agency. And that is a punishment the palace rarely uses unless it believes someone has reached too far. Camilla's position becomes the immediate mystery. Is she blindsided, caught in the sudden cruelty of a decision she didn't anticipate? Or was she prepared, warned in whispers long before the public ever sensed anything? In this dramatized reconstruction, insiders split into two narratives, and both feel plausible because the palace specializes in dual realities. One camp insists this was an emergency correction, triggered by a precipitating incident that crossed an invisible boundary. The other insists it was long planned, the final step in a strategy drafted quietly and patiently while everyone else focused on appearances. Either way, the emotional stakes are brutal: humiliation without explanation, power removed without debate, and the unmistakable message that protection can be revoked. And then there's the most chilling detail: timing. This isn't announced in daylight. It's released late, when people are tired, when the press is hungry, when rumor spreads faster than verification, when a narrative can be shaped before anyone wakes up enough to fight it. That's not accidental in this fictional thriller. It's tactical. The order lands like a weight, and the palace's internal panic masked as procedure begins moving immediately. Calls to advisors, urgent briefings. Staff instructed to say less, not more. Suddenly, unavailable becomes the most common word in royal corridors, because when a power shift happens at the top, everyone below it becomes terrified of being seen reacting the wrong way. The hint that the order was drafted long before it was executed is what turns this from scandal to strategy. Because if it was drafted earlier, then this isn't a spontaneous punishment. It's a contingency, a plan waiting for a trigger. And if there was a plan, there was also a file: notes, concerns, patterns, a record of reasons that made William and Anne conclude that soft influence had become dangerous influence. That possibility makes the silence around the decision feel even louder. The palace isn't simply removing privileges, it's drawing a line, and lines like this are rarely drawn without receipts. Then the cliffhanger hits like a blade in the dark. A leaked line appears effective immediately. Two words that don't just announce a change, they enforce it. They tell you no negotiation is coming, no graceful transition is being offered, no soft landing will be provided. In this fictional reconstruction, effective immediately is the phrase the palace uses when it believes delay equals risk, and when it believes the future must be protected at any cost. And to understand why this decision hits like a constitutional thunderclap, we have to decode what power actually means inside a monarchy that pretends it doesn't have any. In public, royals wave. In private, they gatekeep. In this fictional thriller, Queen Consort power isn't a legal document, it's a network. Who gets the first briefing? Who gets the best access? Who can change a schedule without signing anything? That's why stripping those powers is so brutal. It doesn't remove jewelry. It removes oxygen. And once oxygen is gone, the palace doesn't just change roles, it changes loyalties. Because soft power is how palaces actually function. Access is influence. Proximity is permission. Narrative shaping is governance disguised as tradition. Patronage isn't only charity, it's a web of loyalty, a way of placing your name on organizations, causes, and people who will remember who elevated them. In this dramatized reconstruction, Queen Consort privileges mean you can request a meeting and someone makes it happen. You can ask a question and someone answers quickly. You can walk into a room and the room adjusts itself around you. No signatures required. No laws invoked. Just an invisible system responding to status the way a body responds to gravity. That's what the palace calls permission culture. Who can request what? Who can override whom? Who has the authority to reroute staff, reshape diaries, and decide what is appropriate without anyone ever writing it down? Public symbolism is the polished surface titles, jewelry, ceremonies. Internal command and control is the engine beneath it: briefings, calendars, phone calls, gatekeeping. And when people say there's no real power, what they mean is there's no power you can easily prove. The real power lives in the soft zones, which voices are heard first, which worries get treated as urgent, which meetings quietly happen, and which quietly don't. Over years, harmless influence can steer outcomes without a single dramatic event. A schedule shifted here, a patronage placed there, a conversation delayed until it loses urgency, a person slowly elevated, another slowly sidelined. That's how the palace changes shape, not with explosions, but with erosion. So when those privileges are stripped in this fictional telling, it functions like institutional exile. Camilla's title remains, but her ability to direct the airflow around her disappears. She becomes visible without being influential, present without being powerful. And the reason that feels so violent is that palaces are ecosystems. If someone loses oxygen, everyone who relied on their network scrambles for air. Which brings us to the foreshadow that turns this from restructuring into suspicion. Insiders begin hinting that someone has been abusing access. Not loudly, not publicly, quietly, through channels that weren't supposed to be used that way. That's why the crackdown in this dramatized reconstruction seems engineered not just to punish a person, but to sever pipelines' routes of influence that might have grown too bold, too independent, too hard to control. And then the chilling cliffhanger arrives, the line that makes the entire move feel larger than Camilla herself. Insiders hint the crackdown targeted channels, not people. Which means the palace isn't only correcting behavior, it's dismantling infrastructure. But the question isn't whether Camilla had influence, it's why William would risk war to cut it off. In this fictional reconstruction, William doesn't act like a son caught in emotion, he acts like a future king making a surgical cut. That's what terrifies the palace. He's calm, he's decisive, and he's willing to humiliate a senior figure if it protects the institution's future. Which raises a darker question. Did William discover something that left him no choice? Or has he been waiting for the moment to enforce a boundary the monarchy refused to name? His mindset, as this dramatized thriller frames it, is continuity first, feelings second. Not because he lacks feeling, but because he has learned what the monarchy demands of an heir. You don't get to be purely human when the institution is threatened. You become a structure. He begins to treat Camilla's influence as a long-term risk, not because influence is inherently wrong, but because certain kinds of influence create competing centers of gravity. And competing centers of gravity split households. Split households become headlines. Headlines become legitimacy crises. And legitimacy crises become rain-ending storms before a rain even begins. But the internal conflict still burns under the calm. Personal loyalty versus institutional survival. Family bonds versus public trust. In this fictional telling, advisors press him with the kind of pressure that sounds like wisdom and feels like coercion. Act now or lose control. The stakes are enormous: future reign credibility, family unity, the public's belief that the monarchy is stable rather than fractured. William knows that doing nothing is also a decision, and that decision might be the one he regrets most later. So he moves not loudly, not theatrically, but definitively. And then the final straw revelation is teased, something that forced his hand, something he couldn't absorb quietly without becoming complicit. Not necessarily a single scandal, but a pattern that suddenly became undeniable. In this dramatized reconstruction, a private briefing ends with a line that chills everyone who hears it. "We can't protect this anymore." That phrase doesn't just imply wrongdoing. It implies risk too large to contain. It implies that whatever was happening was no longer manageable with soft denials and quiet fixes. It had crossed into the territory where the only solution is removal. And if William is the blade, Princess Anne is the hand that never shakes, so we have to ask what she knew. Princess Anne doesn't do theatrics, she does consequence. In this fictional thriller, that's exactly why her involvement chills the palace. She wouldn't gamble the monarchy's stability for gossip or grudges. If Anne signs on, she believes a rule has been broken deeply, repeatedly and dangerously. She won't explain it kindly. She'll correct it publicly enough to be understood, and privately enough to be irreversible. Anne is framed here as the institutional guardian, the kind of figure the palace uses when it wants to enforce tradition without apology. She isn't guided by popularity. She's guided by precedent. And in this dramatized reconstruction, she has been tracking patterns quietly for years, watching which lines are respected and which are tested. That's where the idea of the royal ledger comes in, an invisible accounting system of favors granted, boundaries pushed, loyalty tests passed or failed. Nothing dramatic, nothing shouted, just a slow accumulation of small decisions that reveal someone's relationship to power. Anne doesn't need to guess motives when she can measure outcomes. And when outcomes begin threatening the crown's stability, she moves. Her motive isn't personal revenge, it's prevention. Preventing precedent that weakens the institution. Because in Anne's world, the moment the palace allows one consort to override channels, bypass procedures, or create a parallel network of influence, it invites others to do the same. And that's how monarchies fracture, not in one loud scandal, but in 100 small permissions that turn the rules into suggestions. That's why, in this fictional telling, Anne forces the timing now, not later. Not because she enjoys confrontation, but because delay is how soft power hardens into permanent power. If the palace waits, the channels become normal. If the channels become normal, they become unbreakable. But suspicion lingers around her role, because Anne's strength makes her useful, and being useful often means being used. Is she executing someone else's decision, carrying a monarch's will through her hands because she has the credibility to make it look like duty? Or is she driving it, the one who finally convinced William that containment wasn't enough, that the channels had to be severed? The palace feels colder with her involvement, because Anne doesn't bluff, she doesn't posture. If she is in the room, it's because she believes the correction must happen, and because she believes the institution can survive the pain of discipline better than the rot of permission. Then comes the line that seals the emotional tone of the crackdown. A rumor circulates, quiet, sharp, plausible, that Anne said, "This is damage control, not punishment." And that's what makes it terrifying. Because punishment implies emotion. Damage control implies necessity. It implies something has already been harmed, something already destabilized, something already close enough to disaster that the only response left is structural. But if Anne calls it damage control, then we need to know what damage she believes Camilla caused. In this fictional reconstruction, the palace doesn't implode over personality. It implodes over boundaries. A meeting that shouldn't have happened. A memo that shouldn't exist. An instruction that crossed a line no consort is allowed to cross. And once that line is crossed, the monarchy's response isn't emotional, it's procedural violence. Because what's being stripped isn't a person's status, it's their ability to reach into the future and touch what isn't theirs to touch. The trigger incident is teased here as a boundary breach, one of those moments that looks small to outsiders and looks catastrophic to insiders. The paper trail is what makes it lethal. Calendar anomalies, access logs, missing entries that don't disappear by accident. In palaces, absence is evidence. If a meeting vanishes from a diary, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It means someone didn't want it to be traceable, and that transforms this from gossip into institutional risk, reputational risk, operational risk, and the most dangerous kind, succession-adjacent risk. Because anything that threatens the stability of the airline doesn't get treated like drama, it gets treated like fire. That's why staff panic erupts in the quietest ways. Sudden silences, reassigned aides, locked channels, conversations moved off official systems. People who usually glide through palace life begin behaving like they're handling something radioactive. The breach, in this dramatized telling, threatened the airline's stability not by attacking it directly, but by testing whether the consort could bypass the safeguards that protect it. And once that possibility exists, the monarchy responds with procedural force, cutting off access, severing channels, removing the ability to influence without oversight. The worst part is that evidence exists, but is being contained. You can feel it in how quickly the palace shifts into containment mode, in how aggressively it denies without denying, in how urgently it tries to make the story sound like routine restructuring rather than emergency correction. And then the cliffhanger drops like a weight in the dark. An insider claims there's a document they can't burn. Not a rumor, not a feeling, a document, something physical, something traceable, something that proves what was asked, what was ordered, and who was involved. And once there's a document, the palace's next move is predictable. Contain the story before it contains them. When the palace panics, it doesn't shout, it schedules. In this fictional thriller, the crackdown triggers containment protocols, meetings that aren't on calendars, phone calls that leave no record, and statements so clean they feel rehearsed. The goal isn't to explain, it's to stabilize. Because the monarchy can survive outrage, but it cannot survive a visible fracture at the top. So it tries to seal the crack before the public sees daylight through it. The containment machine activates in 3 layers, and it does it with terrifying elegance. Silence first. Words are rationed. Names are avoided. Staff are told to keep it professional, which is palace code for forget what you saw. Substitution second. New narratives are floated like lifeboats, routine, restructuring, modernization, efficiency. Explanations that sound reasonable enough to repeat, but vague enough to be impossible to disprove. And scapegoating third. Because if outrage rises, it must land on something smaller than the institution itself. An aide who miscommunicated, a team that overstepped, a process that needed review. The palace doesn't erase crises. It redistributes them until they fit inside a story the public can digest. Access warfare becomes the sharper blade. Who gets briefed and in what order? Who is isolated for their own protection? Who is protected because their loyalty is essential to the new rules? Doors open for some and close for others, and nobody ever admits that those doors are choices. Staff fear does the rest. Careers here are built on discretion, and discretion becomes dread when the stakes explode. People begin speaking in half sentences, as if the walls have started listening. They don't ask, what happened? They ask, what am I allowed to believe happened? In this dramatized reconstruction, even curiosity becomes risky, because curiosity implies you might not accept the official version. Meanwhile, two media strategies take shape like opposing armies. William's camp moves toward controlled legitimacy short statements, disciplined language, the appearance of calm authority. Camilla's camp moves toward human sympathy soft framing, implied unfairness, careful reminders that stripping powers can look like cruelty if the public interprets it emotionally. Both camps understand the same brutal truth. Perception isn't a side effect in royal life. It's the battlefield. And while they fight for perception, something more dangerous is brewing underneath an internal leak driven not by money, but by anger or conscience. Someone believes the line was crossed. Someone believes the crackdown went too far. Someone believes the institution is lying. And when people believe that, they don't leak for attention. They leak for vengeance. Then the institutional clamp lands, cold and unmistakable. A message circulates no one speaks without clearance. It doesn't just warn staff. It warns the family. It warns the courtiers. It warns anyone tempted to turn their fear into words. Silence becomes policy, enforced not by shouting but by consequence. And the moment silence becomes policy, the palace creates its own enemy, the people who refuse silence. But once silence becomes policy, the people who refuse silence become the threat, especially the ones loyal to Camilla. Power doesn't disappear when it's stripped, it migrates. In this fictional reconstruction, Camilla's allies don't accept demotion quietly. They move through the only channels still available: relationships, favors, and controlled leaks designed to flip sympathy overnight. The palace becomes two courts under one roof, one enforcing the new rules, another resisting them. And the most dangerous weapon isn't a statement. It's the whisper that William and Anne acted out of fear, not principle. The factions harden quickly. Protectors circle Camilla, insisting the crackdown is excessive, framed as discipline but motivated by insecurity. Traditionalists align with Anne's logic, rules over feelings, precedent over popularity, because they fear what happens when a consort's network becomes its own power base. Modernizers argue about optics and long-term legitimacy, worried that harsh internal war makes the monarchy look unstable. Opportunists glide between camps, offering support and collecting future debts, because crises are where careers are made. And in the center of it all, relatives begin choosing sides out of fear, not conviction, fear of being seen as disloyal, fear of being left behind when the hierarchy shifts, fear of being punished for standing too close to the wrong person. Leaks return, sharper, more personal. Selective sympathy for Camilla, selective blame for William. Timed sources insisting the crackdown was overdue, answered by timed sources insisting it was calculated cruelty. The goal isn't truth, it's legitimacy. Who looks reasonable? Who looks ruthless? Who looks like the adult in the room? And as the whisper campaign intensifies, a trap forms: provoke Catherine or William into a public misstep, force a visible crack, then use that crack as proof the heirs are unstable and overreaching. Public confidence becomes collateral in a family war, because nothing terrifies the palace more than a crisis that starts looking like a coup. Then comes the cliffhanger that makes every camp freeze. A rumor spreads of a recording or letter, a reversal tool, something that could flip the narrative overnight and make the crackdown look like overreaction, or make it look like necessity, depending on what it contains. No one confirms it. No one denies it. And that silence, again, sounds like fear. And once a reversal tool exists, the palace's next battlefield becomes optics, because optics decide who looks legitimate. You've seen the royal wave and the perfect calm, but in this fictional reconstruction, every appearance becomes camouflage. The palace can't admit a power stripping without admitting weakness, so it performs unity instead. But unity performed too hard starts to look like panic. Every pairing becomes a signal. Every absence becomes an accusation. And the public begins reading faces like evidence, searching for guilt, for grief, and for the moment someone slips and reveals what really happened. Because optics choreography becomes the palace's only safe language when truth is too dangerous to say out loud. Placements, pairings, omissions, coded alignment disguised as routine. One figure standing a fraction closer becomes a headline in waiting. One figure missing from a lineup becomes a story that writes itself. Silence becomes its own weapon, denials that deny nothing, ambiguity that breeds speculation, and carefully rehearsed lines that calm no one because they feel too perfect to be spontaneous. The public reaction accelerates in waves: sympathy for the wronged, outrage at the overreach, conspiracy appetite, because whenever a palace refuses clarity, people assume the worst version is the real one. And the risk is merciless. One protocol slip confirms the ugliest interpretations. A delayed greeting. A schedule that changes without explanation. An appearance that feels rushed. A too short statement delivered with too smooth certainty. In this dramatized telling, the palace tries to tighten the performance, believing discipline will read as stability, but discipline under pressure often reads as fear. Then the cliffhanger strikes: an unexpected cancellation forces a reshuffle no one can hide. And that reshuffle becomes a visual confession, whether it is meant to be or not. Suddenly the public isn't asking what happened, they're asking who is being protected now, who is being punished, who is being prepared. The choreography can only carry the lie so far before the audience senses the tension under the stage. That reshuffle forces the palace into the most dangerous phase of all, because now it must decide whether to settle this privately or risk a public reckoning. What happens when the palace has to admit the truth to itself, even if it can't admit it to the world? In this fictional climax, the household stops performing and starts deciding. William refuses retreat. Anne refuses apology. Camilla refuses humiliation. And the monarch, caught between love and institution, faces the question that ends all arguments. Do we protect a person or protect the crown? Because once the crown chooses, someone will be sacrificed. This private summit is built for damage control, minimal staff, maximum consequences, and the air feels heavy with the kind of dread no press release can dissolve. Compassion collides with institutional survival in real time. William speaks like a future king who believes hesitation is weakness, insisting the stripped privileges must remain stripped because the monarchy cannot survive a visible retreat. Anne speaks like discipline itself, unmoved by sentiment, framing this as correction, not cruelty. Camilla refuses to accept humiliation as procedure, because procedure is the word palaces use when they want to hurt someone without admitting they intend to, and the monarch sits between them, forced to choose not only what is right, but what is survivable. Moral ambiguity poisons every sentence. Nobody is clean, everyone is calculating. Even sincerity is strategic, because the stakes are too high to be purely emotional. Then the escalation twist lands. New information arrives mid-meeting, shifting power instantly. A detail about the breach. A confirmation of the channels that were targeted. A piece of evidence that makes one side go quiet and the other side go colder. The threat is reframed again. This isn't only about Camilla's behavior, it's about the palace's control, who gets access, who sets precedent, who shapes the future without permission. And the face of stability is chosen, not because everyone agrees, but because the institution needs a focal point. Someone becomes the public anchor, someone becomes the private scapegoat, and someone in that room resents the decision so deeply it turns into a future problem. Then the ultimatum is delivered, the line that freezes argument into outcome. If this goes public, the next step won't be gentle. It's not just a threat, it's a declaration that the institution will enforce silence, protect the narrative, and punish instability, even if relationships fracture permanently. The final sting is chillingly simple. The stripped powers don't return, because precedent is now law. And when law is set in a monarchy, it doesn't just govern today's behavior, It shapes tomorrow's hierarchy. And when precedent becomes law inside a monarchy, the real question isn't who won today, it's who the palace is shaping for tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.